When entering the snowy city of Bruma, we decided best to step out of the chilly air and into the warmth of the local tavern, Olav's Tap and Tack, for some R&R. Once seated, a local Nord prospector, Honmund, worriedly questions between swigs of his ale.
Did you hear about Braden Lyrian? A vampire hunter named Rainil Dralis made his way into town, snuck into his house, and killed him.
Rainil Dralis, you say? Never heard of him.
Yes, the vampire hunter. As far as I know, he just showed up recently here in Bruma. Not only that, but he already found a vampire among us. Apparently, Braden Lyrian was one of those vile creatures, and Rainil slew him. Kinda strange, though. I never figured Braden to be a vampire. He seemed to be such an likable fellow. Take care.
Shocked at this revelation, we exit the inn and our quest updates.
How are you?
I've discovered that Braden Lyrian, a resident here in Bruma, was actually a vampire. He was slain by a vampire hunter who has appeared in town named Rainil Dralis. However, the circumstances of this incident sound sketchy at best. I should make my way to the crime scene at Braden's house to investigate. On our way to the crime scene, we hear the town abuzz with gossip of the incident.
I was at Olav's earlier, and I ran into this Dunmer named Rainil Dralis. After a round or two, he told me he was an honest-to-goodness vampire hunter.
We then step inside Braden's home to find a gruesome crime scene. And we're immediately confronted by the guard.
You're going to have to leave. This is a crime scene, and no one other than ourselves, our Rainil Dralis, will be allowed access. Good day.
The guard, having made himself perfectly clear, resumes his investigation. And our journal updates. I've entered the house of Braden Lyrian in Bruma. A guard named Carius Runelius has told me that this was the scene of a crime. And, unless I was a guard or someone named Rainil Dralis, I should leave. Turning to the Breton commoner's body sprawled across the bed, we can, somewhat unwisely, begin to manhandle the corpse, checking for telltale signs of vampirism. And a pop-up will state, repeated tampering with Braden's corpse is a crime and will alert the authorities. If we disregard the warning, beginning to pull down Braden's breeches to commence an old-fashioned field autopsy, we hear over our shoulder.
It's all over, lawbreaker. Your spree is at an end.
Instead of invoking the wrath of the city guard, we can stroll across the room to Braden's wife, approaching an elderly Breton commoner with her back to us. She gently asks,
Please leave me be.
Excuse me, Mrs. Lyrian. It's about your husband.
I'm sorry. I can't right now.
Respecting the widow's wishes, we turn to our right and approach a Bruma investigator guard who warns.
Excuse me. This area is off limits to anyone except the Bruma City Watch.
As we oblige the guard, Carius Runelius then abruptly halts.
Halt! You're going to have to leave. This is a crime scene, and no one other than ourselves, our Rainil Dralis, will be allowed access.
Having already done this dance, we try our luck and query. If Rainil slew Braden, why are you giving him the keys to this investigation?
The culprit in this crime has already been dealt with. It's just a matter of wrapping up the details. I'd tell you more, but frankly, I don't know who you are, so I'm not sure that I can trust you with that sort of information.
We then spend the better part of 45 minutes complimenting Carius' stylish ponytail, and he concedes.
Please, I'm embarrassed, but thank you. That works for me.
So you were saying about this vampire hunter. I mean, I've heard half the stories on the street already.
I suppose there's no harm in telling you what happened. Word is bound to get around Bruma anyway. Turns out that Braden Lyrian is a vampire. Or was. If it wasn't for Rainil Dralis, we may never have uncovered the truth. Let me explain. In the last week or so, we've found 2 bodies stashed in shallow graves outside the city walls. The bodies had puncture wounds on their necks. The bodies were those of some beggars who used to wander the streets looking for handouts. Vampire probably thought no one would miss them. Luckily for us, Rainil arrived in town. He said he was a vampire hunter, so we asked for his help. He tracked the vampire to this house. When he entered the place around noon, Brayden was sleeping. He was able to slay him at that point. Luckily, Brayden's wife wasn't home. Poor thing. She didn't even know her husband was infected. We did a follow-up investigation, and it's true that no one recollects seeing Brayden out in the daylight. He's only been spotted at night. I'm afraid there's not much more to tell you, so you can see we really don't need any help, but thanks for the offer.
So Raynald Draelis enters town and, without any help from the guards, finds the supposed vampire Brayden Lyrian and executes him on the spot. What do you make of that?
I'm impressed. It only took him a day to track the vampire down. I guess that's why he does it for a living.
Well, that does certainly make sense, but didn't anybody suspect Brayden Lyrian?
As far as I know, he was a good man. I never saw this coming. But vampires are masters of deception, so I guess it makes sense. I'm going to make arrangements for removal of the bodies, and then I'll probably stay on guard here for a bit. We're afraid there may be retribution on Brayden's wife, even though she had nothing to do with it. Vampires are a hated lot. Feel free to question anyone in town. They shouldn't give you too much trouble.
A quest then updates. I've spoken to Karis Runelius, an investigator for the Bruma City Watch, at the crime scene. He says that Raynald slipped into the house undetected and killed the vampire in its sleep around noon. The wife wasn't home as she works during the day. Also, the body of an unidentified beggar has been found stashed in Brayden's house. I should question Brayden's wife if I want to investigate further. To our left, Brayden's grieving widow then beseeches.
Perhaps you can help me. I can't believe this is happening. Please, please, I need your help. My husband was no vampire. It's ridiculous. No one will listen to me.
Although Mrs. Lyrian has every reason to be hysterical, we should at least hear her out saying, "Please, calm down. I want to help."
Forgive me. I loved my husband dearly, and to lose him this way makes no sense. Anything you can do to help would be wonderful. This is all happening so fast.
I promise I'll do everything I can to help. Perhaps we should start from the beginning. Tell me what happened.
I came home only just a few hours ago. I found the door open and my Brayden dead. Standing over him was a Dunmer. I screamed and ran out into the street. Some city watch were nearby and heard me, I suppose, as they arrived quickly. I heard the Dunmer identify himself as Raynald Draelis. He said he was a vampire hunter and that Brayden was his mark. The guards seemed to know about Raynald, and after a search of the house, the body of some beggar was found stashed in our basement. The guards sent for Carius, who is an investigator for crimes here in Bruma. In minutes, Raynald convinced Carius that Brayden was a vampire.
Why would a vampire hunter frame your husband? I gotta be honest, the evidence looks bad for Brayden.
Well, of course it does. It was obviously planted here. Why would he stash a body in his own house? That's ridiculous. And another thing. The guards are making a big deal out of no one seeing Brayden out in the daylight. Well, of course that's the case. He works at night and has to sleep during the day. Why does that make him a vampire? It's all that Raynald character. I don't trust him. The thing that bothers me the most is that I swear I've seen him before. Of course, he says he's never been here. Look, there isn't much more to say. Please, help me clear my husband's name.
Well, if I'm gonna clear your husband's name, I need to locate his murderer/accuser. Do you know where Raynald Draelis is, perchance?
I have no idea where he'd be. Just find him and make him tell you the truth. I swear he's a liar.
Beginning our own investigation in earnest, we then head inside Brayden Lyrian's basement in search of the vampire's supposed first victim, and find by the northwestern wall a beggar's body, as promised, sprawled on the ground, blood oozing out of its neck, and the Nord's jugular sporting 2 telltale puncture wounds. And we see why this would look like an open and closed case for the city guards. With no discernible evidence to clear Lyrian's name, we seek out Carius once more.
Excuse me. Oh, you're back. So, Any new revelations in your, investigation?
We quickly discern Carius's heavy bias and argue. Look, I know it's a long shot, but Erlene Lyrian believes that Raynal is lying and that she's met him before. I'm not accusing Raynal of anything just yet, but don't you feel like this whole case is a little on the nose?
I'm sure Erlene is very upset. She'll be safe, though. Raynal has confirmed with us that she isn't infected. Her accusations that Raynal is lying is not surprising. At this point, she's so upset that she'll say anything to deny what really happened. I suppose if I found out a loved one was something as horrid as a vampire, I'd find any excuse not to believe it either.
I totally agree, but we can't discount that Raynal actually may have something to do with the murder, or there's a third party at play here.
I'll warn you about one thing. I understand you wanting to help Erlene by checking up on Raynal. We have it on good authority from officials in a neighboring city that Raynal is what he says he is. So I'm not sure what you're trying to prove. I am only allowing you to do this investigation, and I use that term very loosely, because Erlene is so distraught. Keep up the good work, I suppose.
Carius making his position clear on our investigation. Erlene, distraught, admits.
Do you have any more questions? I'm afraid I know little more. I know I sound desperate, but I know I'm right.
Leaving the bereaved wife with the city's guards to dine by her former lover's remains, no less. We march out into the cold in search of the vampire hunter Raynal Draelis, despite the guards' direct warning against this course of action, and our quest updates. Braden's wife Erlene told me her husband is innocent. She says that he simply works at night and sleeps during the day. She also suspects that somebody must have planted the body. She seemed to cast a suspicious light on Raynal, whom she says she recognises. I think I should locate Raynal and ask him some questions as well. I should start with some of the merchants and innkeepers in town. Entering the close-by, refined establishment, the Giral View, we approach the owner Hafid Hollowleg, who welcomes.
Welcome to Bruma, stranger. Hafid Hollowleg. I'm your host at Giral View. Bed, food, whatever you need.
Actually, I was looking for some information on a new character in town. Raynal Draelis. Heard of him?
Ah, you mean that vampire hunter. He's staying over at Olav's Tap and Tack. It's near the city gates. You can't miss it. Farewell.
Wasting no time in cornering our quarry, we make haste to the inn by the eastern gate. Inside Olav's Tap and Tack, the eponymous innkeeper questions.
What can I do for you today?
I wanted to learn more about the vampire Braden Lyrian. His wife Erlene's convinced he was set up. What's your take?
I know I may be out of line by saying this, but I think the city guards may be wrong. It's hard to imagine Braden was a vampire. I could have sworn I saw him outside in the daylight before. Unless he just got that disease very recently, I'd say they were mistaken. When I heard Raynal killed him, I didn't know what to think. But after your visit here, I'm beginning to wonder.
Well, if you tell me where Raynal Draelis is staying, you won't have to wonder much longer.
I usually don't give out that kind of information, especially to people I don't know.
I have something for that right here.
So? That'll get you something.
I thought as much. Now, you were saying where Raynal Draelis was staying, perhaps?
Raynal's staying in the last room down the hall upstairs. Here's the key. I always liked Braden and Erlene. They were a nice couple. I hope you get to the bottom of this, because I don't believe he was a vampire either.
Olav then dutifully hands us the key and our quest updates. I've spoken to Olav at Olav's Tap and Tack. I was able to convince him to give me the key to Raynal's room. He told me that it was up the stairs and at the end of the hall. That should be my next destination. Entering Draelis' empty room, our quest updates. I've entered Raynal's room. I should carefully search the place for anything suspicious. Inside the inconspicuous room, we see 2 drawers, a bed, rug, and a bench, but no Draelis and nothing. Wait a second. a journal wedged behind the dresser that reads, Gellerborn's Journal, by Gellerborn, the journal of an enterprising brotherhood tomb robber. The 8th day has passed, and still there is no sign of the artifact. We've covered most of the remainder of the outer guard tower and scoured the crumbled gatehouse ruins, but not one clue has arisen as to where it may have been buried. It's quiet out here, as if the ruins were paying respects to the alien inhabitants that disappeared here long ago. We haven't encountered anything hostile, but if we do, I think we're ready. The Brotherhood's been in worse scrapes before. Braden paid good money for the information as to our treasure's whereabouts, and I hope it doesn't turn out to be yet another fiasco. This morning our camp was set upon by some bandits who were protecting what they claimed was their territory. Considering that we were outnumbered 3-1, we did very well. Only Reynolds suffered a small wound, but that was easily healed by a potion that Braden had thoughtfully brought with him on our expedition. After getting rid of the bandits' corpses, we set out to tackle the largest part of the ruin, the remains of the Great Keep. 2 of the walls of the once mighty structure were collapsed, scattering the telltale whitish rock, so typical of the Aeolian architecture in this part of Tamriel. This made our assault on the ruin difficult, as many of the larger chunks of the wall were far too heavy for us to move. Braden suggested that we search the center of the building's foundation for any underground entrances, which was typical for this type of keep. His guess paid off, and after several hours of back-breaking work, we managed to clear an opening just large enough for us to squeeze through and enter an ancient stairwell leading down into the ground. We decided to wait until morning's light to begin our descent into the depths of the ruin. After a restless sleep, all of us were quite excited at the prospect of what might lie ahead. Eagerly, we dipped our torches in a fresh container of pitch, lit them, and entered the inky blackness of the stairwell. The stale air was choked with dust and fine grit, a sign that no one had entered this portion of the ruins in a very long time. We became excited, as that meant no other tomb robbers had gotten there before us. The stairwell eventually leveled out into a corridor of sorts that snaked its way to the north. As we carefully walked along, I scanned the floor and walls very carefully for any types of triggers, tripwires, or pressure plates. Such was my speciality. The Aeoliad were well known for their cunning traps protecting their tombs, and I wasn't taking any chances. Braden, the scholar of the Brotherhood, was getting more and more excited as we traversed the passage. He was translating the wall carvings and was becoming certain that we'd finally found the true location of our prize. After walking for several more minutes, we were overjoyed to see what we were hoping to see. The hallway ended at a metal door with a carving of a spider upon it. Now came the true test of Braden's information. The door supposedly had a puzzle lock. By pulling the spider's legs in a certain combination, it would unlatch. The wrong combination would spell our deaths, perhaps triggering a collapse of the hallway or some other equally deadly trap. With a shaky hand, I pulled the legs one by one in the order I had memorized. The 6th one, then the 1st one, the 2nd one, the 8th one, and finally the 1st one again. I closed my eyes as there were a few loud clicks, and then the door popped open. We all breathed a sigh of relief. Pushing open the door, I looked in at a huge room with a pedestal at the center. Sitting on the pedestal, illuminated by a shaft of sunlight from a tiny hole in the ceiling, was our prize. The floor was covered in a huge mosaic of a stylized spider, all of its legs coming to a point and ending up at the door entrance. This was the last of the traps the Aeoliad left behind to protect their treasure. Again, if it hadn't been for Braden's skill at acquiring information, we may never have known how to solve the last line of defense. I instructed Braden and Raynell to remain at the entrance and to tie a rope around my waist in case of a sudden pitfall. Carefully, I began to walk on the darkened tiles that formed the 3rd leg of the spider. Sweat beaded on my forehead, as the pathway made by the tiny pieces of ceramic was very narrow at the start, and one slip could again mean instant death. But death never arrived. The information had been correct, and I was able to make it to the pedestal and secure the artifact. Quick as possible, we made our way back out and into the daylight. Once again, the Brotherhood was triumphant, and it was time to return home. At the tavern that night, we decided to make a pact. We would stash the artifact in a cave not far from Bruma until we researched it further. An item of its magnitude could be very dangerous if mishandled, and we certainly didn't want to sell it without understanding its true value. Brayden agreed to contract a local cooper to construct a chest with 3 locks. Each of us would hold a key to one of the locks, so none would have access to the artifact without the others being present. For the rest of the evening, we drank merrily and sang many a song of adventures past and adventures to come. Stashing the journal on our person, we're shocked at the revelation and our journal updates. I've discovered a small journal at Raynell's room at the inn. It seems he was part of a group of adventurers who uncovered an artifact of some sort of alien ruins. They all agreed to stash the artifact in a cave until more research could be done about it. Each of them took a key to the chest it was secured in. The 2 other members of the group were Brayden and someone named Gellerborn. I need to find out more about Gellerborn to confirm my suspicions about Raynell. Olav may be able to help. Seeking out the broad Nord as he's in bed mid-snore, he wakes to question.
What can I do for you today?
Sorry to disturb you, it's important. Have you heard of a man named Gellerborn?
Gellerborn? That's odd that you should mention that name. Raynell told me that he was the last vampire he hunted. Yeah, that's right. Somewhere in Skingrad, I believe. He said he tracked Gelborn down and killed him. That's apparently why the guards trust him so readily. They had gotten word from Skingrad's City Watch about Raynell and his so-called accomplishment.
Thank you. That's actually invaluable insight. Can you tell me anything else about Raynell?
Nothing else I can tell you about him. He comes and goes and doesn't talk to people much. Just look for me if you need anything else.
Exiting the inn with this crucial piece of evidence, we make our way back to the Lyrian residence to speak to the guards and our journal updates. The innkeeper Olav told me that Gellerborn was slain in Skingrad by none other than Raynell. As with Brayden, Raynell claimed Gellerborn was a vampire. I think Raynell is using the vampire as a cover story to get the keys to the chest where they stashed the artifact. I think it's time to speak to Carius Runelius about Raynell. He must be stopped.
Hello.
Oh, you're back. So, any new revelations in your, investigation?
Well, that depends if, know anything about Gellerborn being slain in Skingrad.
How do you know about that? Too many people don't know how to keep quiet about official matters. Very well. The Skingrad City Watch informed us that Gellerborn was killed by Raynell not too long ago. Gellerborn was a vampire as well, obviously.
Gellerborn was a vampire? I disagree.
What do you mean you disagree? That's a bold statement. What proof do you have that Gellerborn was not a vampire?
I'm glad you asked. I have Gellerborn's journal. See for yourself.
I don't know what to say. It all makes perfect sense now. Why else would Raynell have removed this journal from the crime scene in Skingrad? I heard no mention of a key either. It must have been removed by Raynell from Brayden's body before we arrived. To think that 2 innocent men were killed, and that I'm responsible for one of their deaths, I'm speechless. I will rouse the guard and begin a search for him in the city. Meet me at Olav's Tap and Tack in 1 hour.
Gellerborn's journal is then removed from our inventory, and as Runelius darts off to apprehend Raynell, Erlene reiterates as we follow behind.
I know I sound desperate, but I know I'm right. What is it?
Did Brayden ever mention a man named Gellerborn, perchance?
Yes, I remember Brayden mentioning that name once. He was part of the Brotherhood he had created with Raynell.
Exactly, the same Raynell we found in Gellerborn's journal.
I knew I'd recognise Raynell. I think when I first met Brayden many years ago, he introduced me to him. They were part of some sort of brotherhood. They would roam Cyrodiil in search of legendary treasures and the like. The only reason he stopped doing that is because we got married and he wanted to settle down. I'm afraid, thanks to Raynal, that time is lost. Travel safe. Raynal wouldn't think twice about harming you.
As we make our way back to Olav's, Bruma is buzzing with guards and our quest updates. I've given Geliborn's journal to Carius. He was shocked at the story contained within and vowed to bring Raynal to justice. He's gone to inform the guards, and he said to meet him back at Olav's Tapentak in an hour. Entering the inn, Carius intercepts.
Just before I arrived here, I received a report from one of our scouts watching the roads. Raynal was spotted heading west out of Bruma. The scout tried to follow, but lost him in the mountains. The only cave to the west that comes close to the one described in Geliborn's journal is Boreal Stone Cave. That must be where he's headed. You must get there before he acquires whatever artifact is being kept there and makes his escape. I'm keeping the city guard in Bruma, as Raynal doesn't know we're after him. If he sees a guard, he may panic and run. You're my only hope at the moment. Please, you have my authorization to do everything you can to bring him to justice. If he won't surrender, I think you know what to do. Hurry. I fear you have a day at the most to stop him. If all you say is true, Raynal will answer for Braden's death.
And what of Geliborn?
Raynal will pay for both crimes. Geliborn was likely another innocent he's slain. I'll make sure Skingrad City Watch hears of this.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Raynal's going to be coming back to Bruma with us, dead or alive.
I can't wait to get my hands on Raynal. He'll become very familiar with Bruma's dungeons, or the end of my blade if he doesn't come peacefully. Please hurry. Raynal may make a break for the open road at any moment.
With our plan to surreptitiously apprehend the pseudo-vampire hunter, our quest updates. Carius told me that Raynal was seen leaving Bruma and heading west. According to the journal, the cave where the artifact is stashed is in that direction. Carius mentioned that the only cave in that direction that matches the journal's description is Boreal Stone Cave. Carius also feels that I only have a day before Raynal can make good his escape, so I must get there quickly. Now, this is the part of the quest where we can explore 3 different options to A, fail the quest, B, succeed, or C, a more hidden option of a pacifist ending. Choosing to fail the quest, if we dawdle in the town centre of Bruma for more than 24 hours, despite Carius's warnings that Raynal would escape, our quest would update. A full day has passed and I haven't made it to Boreal Stone Cave to stop Raynal. I fear I may be too late. I should hasten there as soon as I can to confirm my theory. Arriving at the cave sometime later, we enter its single rickety door. Trudging our way down its narrow hall into a submerged cavern, clearly abandoned by the false vampire hunter Raynal some time ago. We then locate a waterlogged chest by the western wall and see it's ajar, its contents pilfered. Raynal must have been in possession of all 3 keys and left with his prize his 2 companions died for some time ago. Our quest and updates. I've arrived at Boreal Stone Cave and found it completely empty. I fear Raynal has made off with the artifact, and he's disappeared. I should inform Carius. Making our way back to the snowy city of Bruma, we find Carius stalking the castle, and upon seeing us, questions.
You're back. What news do you bring me? I see from your expression that you have grave news.
Well, it's about Braden Lyrian.
You must avenge his unjust death.
I don't think that's possible. When I entered Boreal Stone Cave, Raynal Dralis had already fled, with his prized artifact no less. I'm sorry we missed him.
I provided Raynal's description to all of the Bruma soldiers, and even dispatched his description to guards in other cities. However, I'm afraid he's slipped through our fingers. If he's as crafty as he's been up to now, he's probably halfway to Vardenfell.
What happens with Braden now?
It's a shame that there'll be no retribution for Braden and Geliborn's deaths, but such is the way of things. I know you did your best, In your absence, I dispatched a runner to Skingrad to let them know they needed to clear Gelliborn's name for the record books. Like Braden, I think he deserves to have his name clear of wrongdoing.
Well, that's something. Did anybody catch a glimpse of the elusive Raynal at least?
I'm sorry. There's been no sighting of him yet. Don't know if there ever will be. Goodbye.
Departing the castle, our quest would finally update. Carius mentioned that Raynal has slipped through their grasp and made good his escape from the area. They'll keep watch for him, but they doubt he will return. I'm afraid I'll never see him again. Delivering the bad news for a second time, we locate Erlene Lyrian loitering in the nearby chapel. Defeated, she admits.
There isn't much more to say. I'm sorry.
So what happens if we don't fail to catch up to Raynal Dralis in his hideout? Arriving at Borealis Cave, we again enter its murky depths, making a desperate beeline through the shallows to the chest, and realise we must have all 3 of the keys to open this chest, and turn to see a sickly green Dunmer approach in fur armour who congratulates.
Congratulations. I had a feeling you would catch on sooner or later. Leaving that journal behind was a stupid mistake on my part. I saw you enter Olav's Tap and Tack before I could get there, and I knew that I had to sneak out of Bruma somehow. It was only a matter of time before you or Carius figured it out. No matter. After I've killed you, I won't need my vampire hunter ruse any longer.
I'm taking it you will not surrender then. The guard Captain Carius in Bruma was looking forward to sharing his unique brand of hospitality with you.
Certainly not. I'm surprised Carius didn't send the entire city watch up here, but then I would have seen that coming, I suppose. I expected to lay low for a while and then be on my way. So again, I underestimated you. This leaves me with little choice. Either I fight you now and have a chance at freedom, or I surrender and rot in a city dungeon. I prefer the chance for freedom.
You're right. This is your last chance.
Yes, I suppose it is. Well then, we've talked enough. Only one of us will walk out of here alive this day. Good luck.
Raynal then hefts his two-handed sword, and while it seems too heavy for him to swing, we are still left at a disadvantage with our shorter blade. And thus, we dart up a small landing behind the chest and loose an arrow from our bow as he impotently taunts.
Your presence here will not be tolerated.
With Raynal dead, our quest updates. I've located Raynal in Boreal Stone Cave. He refused to surrender, choosing instead to attack me. I was forced to kill him to defend myself. I can now recover the artifact mentioned in Gelliborn's journal from the chest. Searching Dralis' corpse, we find all 3 keys on his person, as well as the paltry 9 gold he was living off, and unceremoniously pluck our arrow from his octal cavity for later use. Equipping the Dunmer's furs before we freeze in the cave, we then approach the chest and note in our journal. Opening the waterlogged chest with all 3 keys, I discovered the artifact to be an amulet. It seems fairly unremarkable, and I'm unsure of its function. I think I should bring it back to Erlene Lyrian and see what she wants me to do with it. Before we depart with the amulet in hand, there is a third, little-known pacifist option to be had, though it is pretty tricky, whereby if we can miraculously sidestep Raynal's detection when entering the cave's main cavern, and pickpocket his key, no less, post-stealing the amulet.
Pickpocket! Pickpocket! God!
Raynal will then later become as docile as a kitten once the quest is ended.
Greetings, Imperial. What can I do for you? Farewell.
Spending the remainder of his days lazily traversing the cave with all his 9 gold inside the dank cavern, and can even be greeted with generic dialogue as he does not seem to recognize us. However, instead, if we'd killed Dralis and returned to the avenged Lyrian widow, we would find her vindicated husband's remains thankfully removed from their residence, and she greets.
I was praying for your swift return. What news do you bring?
Good news. Raynal Dralis is no more, and I've returned with their Brotherhood's prize, but alas, I believe it was a fake, unfortunately.
Long ago, I made a promise to Braden. I promised to never reveal to anyone what I'm about to reveal to you now. However, because you've avenged his unjust death, I feel that Braden would understand why I'm breaking that pact. Braden told me about this amulet when they first brought it home from whatever distant land it came from. He never really trusted anyone else in the group, and before he secured the treasure in that cave, he had a special enchantment placed upon it. The magic masks the true identity of the item. All it takes is a simple command word, and the amulet would be restored to its true state.
Did the word die with Braden?
No. He always feared this day would come. He left me knowledge of that word in the event that he died, and I came into possession of the keys. If the other members of Braden's group were still alive, and I on my deathbed, only then would I pass the knowledge on to them. If you'd give me that amulet, I would like to show you what you've recovered.
Certainly. Here it is.
Thank you. I will now speak the word. Brotherhood. Here is the amulet back. It's as beautiful as it was the day I remember seeing it long ago. I want you to keep it, as I have no use for this anymore. I'm certain that's what I want, and I'm certain that's what Braden would want. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope that the amulet helps keep you safe on whatever roads you may travel.
With the phylactery of lightness added to our inventory, which will boost your speed dependent on level, we finally query. So, Raynell's gone. How do you feel now?
I'm glad he's dead. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but I think you understand. Justice has been done.
Totally understandable. Probably shouldn't tell her we're wearing his furs, though. Departing the Lyrian estate, heading for Carius Runelius once again in the castle, he greets.
What brings you to me this day?
Raynell Dralis is dead. Sorry I couldn't bring him in alive.
You did what had to be done. There should be no regrets or doubts in your mind about it. Raynell was an evil Dunmer, and he deserved that fate.
I just feel bad for poor Braden and Gellerborn, you know?
Although we can't go back and undo what's been done, I feel justice has been served and Braden's soul may rest with ease. In your absence, I dispatched a runner to Skingrad to let them know they needed to clear Gellerborn's name for the record books. Like Braden, I think he deserves to have his name clear of wrongdoing. Have you ever considered a job in law enforcement?
Thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel in a more personal way, we do have a Patreon with different tiers of interaction and rewards to be had. But as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, Traveller.